Welcome to Denton Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Crystal Sullivan. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Whatever your reason, whatever your worldview, your spiritual tradition, age, race, gender, sexual orientation, financial means, physical ability, or political affiliation, you are all welcome here. Newcomers, please complete the online visitor information card to connect with us. See the chat or the seat pocket in front of you. Each week, children ages up to 3 years old are welcome in the sanctuary or in the nursery in the fellowship hall. Children ages 4 through 5th grade are invited to join our Explorers group by signing in the welcome wagon back there, and will be invited to the room later in service. Youth grades 6th through 12th grade are invited to remain in the service. All right, for our announcements today, our next new member ceremony is Sunday, December 1st. Please complete the new member application available on our website if you would like to make your connection to DOOF official. After worship today, you can join us for our informational budget meeting here in the sanctuary and on Zoom. The congregational meeting to vote on the budget will be December 8th. Following the information meeting, the Spirit Matters drop-in group will meet to learn more about and discuss this month's spiritual practice, Keeping the Sabbath. That will happen in classroom number 1. Pride Denton and Outreach Denton's annual Trans Day of Remembrance Vigil ceremony is this Wednesday, November 20th from 6 to 8 p.m. The ceremony includes reading the names of trans kin lost in 2024. The event will be outdoors at the South Lakes Pavilion in South Lakes Park, and the pavilion is wheelchair accessible. On Thanksgiving Day at 1 p.m., please join DOOF's Friendsgiving here in the Fellowship Hall. Bring a dish to share. Today, we welcome Dr. Robert Flowers, who is a native Texan but has lived in 6 different states, finished high school and college in Alabama, and did all his graduate work in Texas. He spent 25 years as an ordained ministry in the United Methodist Church, leaving that in 2019. Since then, he has dabbled in real estate, teaching 7th graders, to which he says he survived. The supplemental insurance, I understand that. And he's been a supplemental insurance sales. He is a single dad to a wonderful, talented, smart 12-year-old daughter, and he enjoys sports, cooking, reading, and craft beers, and the occasional bourbon. Sounds like a good time. So now let's prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
There is too much beauty in this world to give up on it yet. And it is always too soon to surrender to cynicism. Bring your doubt, your skepticism, your downright confusion, and even your bitterness. And in the midst of all these, in the center of it, wrap your tender fingers around a bright thread of hope. And feel in your heart that steady hunger for something more. The vision that we glimpse every day in the rising sun across the foothills, the light that spreads across the face of someone we love, the look of knowing all there is to know, and still loving life, loving us just as we are, just as this world is. For this hour, we come to celebrate, to give thanks, to refuse to give up, to steady ourselves, keepers of hope, brave builders of this still possible world. Let us worship together. I now invite our office administrator, Elijah Compton, to come forward to light our chalice. We light this chalice to remind us that love is the center. As we grow and connect, mature, and deepen, love remains the center. When the light of truth will burn all else away, love will remain. Thank you. Please rise and body your spirit for hymn number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. We can totally clap when we do a good job. Today, our message for all ages comes from the Cherokee tradition. You're welcome to come closer, but you don't have to if you're feeling shy, but be ready if you think it's your turn to light the chalice. I feel like, is it y'all's turn to light it? Is it your turn? Yeah? It's not time yet, but I'll tell you when it's time, okay? Okay. Hi. Do you want to do it next week? Okay, good. Or next time you're here? Okay. When the earth was first made, it was very dark, and the animals were afraid. One day, Bear said, I have seen the light on the other side of the world, but the people will not share. Perhaps we could take some for ourselves. The other animals thought that is a great idea, and they just started to discuss who should go to the other side of the world. Who should go get the light? I'll go, said Fox. Okay, so I should tell you, this story has things that you're going to think, did that really happen? This is the kind of story that has examples so you can think about how people thought about the world and how they tried to make sense of it. So Fox went and stole a piece of the light in his mouth. But it was so hot, it burned his mouth and he dropped it. And people say that is why the fox still has a black mouth inside to this day. So Fox went back and said, I'm sorry I didn't get the light. It's really hot. So Possum said, I'll go. Possum tried next. She wrapped the light in her tail, and she tried to drag it back across the world, but it was too hot, and she dropped it. And people say that is why possums do not have fur on their tails. So Possum said, it's really hot. I know I didn't believe Fox, but it really is. So Crow said, let me try. So Crow went off to steal the light, but when the light was close, before Crow had even touched it, It singed all of the feathers, which turned black. And people say that's why crows have the blackest of feathers. Finally, Grandmother Spider said, "I will go." When she reached the light, even though she had heard everyone talk about the light and how hot it was, she could not believe how hot it was. So she started to spin and spin her web. And she was a little bit away from the light. But she's spinning and spinning, and then she takes all of her spinnings and she makes a bag. And she approaches the light, and it's burning and it's so hot, but quick as a flash, she grabs some of the light and gets it into her bag. And she carries the bag as far back from her as she can as she crosses over the world. And she gets back to her friends and she says, "I got it." And the animals are so excited. "Hooray for Grandmother Spider," they say. Everybody is shouting, they're so excited. Grandmother Spider was really happy to share the light with the other animals. She said, "Maybe we should hang the light in the sky so everybody can be warmed by it, even the plants." The other animals thought, that is a great idea. But how should we get it into the sky? Vulture said, "I will go." He took the bag of light and he put it on his head. But it was so hot, but he could stand it. He could do it. He flew higher and higher, but as he flew higher, the bag got hotter and hotter. Why? Oh, you got it. You got the pattern. I'll let you tell it in a second. He climbed higher, and as he climbed higher, his feathers turned black. And still higher, and the feathers on his head burned off. Still higher, and his head turned red. And at the last possible section, he threw the light into the sky as hard as he could. And so what were you saying? That's why vultures are bald. Okay. So the light is up in the sky. So the sun hung bright and beautiful, warming all the land, and all the animals and plants benefited from the work of the friends. What do you think of that story? Do you think it's true? Why do you think people would tell a story like that? Because they didn't know anything? Right. We don't know the reason there's a sun, so I can make it up. Yeah. And sometimes our storytellers did know some, but they still love to tell stories. What do you think? Were you raising your hand? No, not raising your hand. Okay. Well, we like to tell stories that come from a lot of traditions, even if they don't match the knowledge that we have, but they still sometimes bring us wisdom. Okay, Miles, are you ready to light the chalice? No? You sure? Okay, alternates, you ready? Come on up. We need two. Can you hold it? Can you stand right here like this? Awesome. And we'll say together the words in the order of service. This is our chalice of love and of light, uniting you use by day and by night. Thank you. And yes, fire. And now you get to lead the way to your class and carry it with you. And we'll sing them on their way.
Let us join together in a spirit of prayer, love, and solidarity. For all the persons and situations that we have named today, we pray for peace and comfort, for healing and wholeness, and with the joys we too celebrate. As we gather here today, once again, we gather not necessarily of one mind, but of one purpose. We embrace our diversity, celebrate our gifts, and unite in action. May we never lose sight that we need each other, that we function best when we allow other voices to be heard, and it makes each one of us better. May we know that while we are individuals with our uniquenesses, we can become ourselves better when we are together. May we commit to being peaceful, positive, hopeful, and patient in the days ahead. As Gandhi reminded us, be the change you want to see in the world. And may we know that our being is coupled with our action as they work hand in hand for our common goals and life. So in this day and in this moment, let us breathe deeply, rest intentionally, and live into the future realities of our goodness. And so may it be. Amen.
Right now, as we are in this liminal space between the election and Inauguration Day, it's kind of hard to know what to do for me personally. I feel like I should begin taking a lot of action, but I also know that I need to rest right now. And I've been thinking one thing we can do is show up for each other in simple ways in this liminal time. Because when we show up for each other in these small ways, we're reminding ourselves and our community of our power, our collective power and love. In a world that's becoming both more welcoming and more hell-bent on not being welcoming, it's not nothing to show up. Wednesday is Transgender Day of Remembrance, and our friends at Outreach Denton and Pride Denton are gathering and reading the names of trans and non-binary folks who have died in 2024. And I'm thinking, what if we were all there too, creating this same sacred space for precious people who are gone too soon, and embodying that sacred community that we experience here for our precious trans selves and friends who are scared and angry and just here right now. So I'll see you there on Wednesday. Our first reading is by Roque Salas Rivera, who is a Puerto Rican poet and translator of trans experience. It's called If Time is Queer and Memory is Trans and My Hands Hurt in the Cold, Then. There are ways to hold pain like night follows day, not knowing how tomorrow went down. It hurts like never when the always is now, the now that time won't allow. There is no manner of tomorrow nor shape of today, only like always having to leave from and toward the futures could be, in order to never more see the sea. And if forever proves me wrong, it'll hurt with the hurt of before the before. It'll have to take me along, all the never enough of why and therefore. Life has given me much to believe, but more is the doubt that undid what I know. For like night follows day, the pleasure is sure of forever beginning once more. Please rise and body your spirit for hymn number 1053, How Could Anyone?
You
Our second reading is The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water. And I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Each week we gather and are reconnected and recommitted to each other in this community. We collect an offering each week to honor that connection and to ensure the longevity of the community. Our second offering recipient is the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, founded during World War II to assist people in escaping from Nazi-occupied countries. The UUSC provides support for countries around the world and at home, consistent with our UU values. Please see the chat or the order of service for ways to give. The offering is now gratefully received.
We'd like to dedicate this song to our trans siblings that were so cruelly taken from us in the past year.
I will be walking one day down a street far away and see your face in a crowd and smile, knowing how you made me laugh, hearing sweet echoes of you from the past. I will remember you. Look in my eyes while you're near. Tell me what's happening here. See that I don't want to say goodbye. Our love is frozen in time. I'll be your champion and you will be mine. I will remember. I will remember you. Later on, when this fire is an ember, later on, when the night's not so tender, given time, though it's hard to remember, darling, I will be holding, I'll still be holding to you. I will remember you. So many years come and gone, and yet the memory is strong. One word we never could learn. Goodbye. True love is frozen in time. I'll be your champion and you will be mine. I will remember you. So please remember. I will remember you.
It's water, not bourbon, in case you were wondering. I heard a story years ago about a guy who went to a Unitarian Universalist church, and before the service he was in coffee hour, and he was eavesdropping these two people that were talking, and one of them said, "You know, I prefer buffet to catered." Forgive me if you've heard this. And the visitor eavesdropping said, "Well, what's wrong with catered food?" And the guy said, "We were talking theology." All right. First, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. It's great to be here. I'm very familiar with the UU tradition. When I lived in Waco, I was a United Methodist campus minister to the campus of Baylor University, and as my friends told me, I was a Methodist missionary to the Baptists. That's saying a lot. But my 7 years there, I was very fortunate to get involved with a clergy support group. It was myself, a Unitarian pastor, and the pastor of the Metropolitan Community of Church there in Waco. Yes, Waco has a gay church. And the gifts that I learned from those guys were invaluable. And the Unitarian minister invited me to preach at his place several times, which I greatly loved. And even before that, when I was in seminary in Dallas, I became very good friends with a Unitarian Universalist student, and she always used to tell me, "Well, you know, Methodists make good Unitarians." And so I'm here to tell you that, yeah, that's probably true. I own 2 pair of Birkenstocks. And tomorrow, finally, I'm picking up my first hybrid car. And just a few words about how I know Elijah. Elijah was my office assistant when I became chaplain at Texas Wesleyan University in Fort Worth. And it so happened, none of this was planned, that was Elijah's first semester transitioning. And I don't think he could have planned or expected how things would happen, but at least for me, and I think this was true not just for my office, but for the entire third floor religion department, we got to transition with Eli. That was a gift to all of us. We got to remind ourselves about pronouns. We got to go through some of that. But the main thing I remember from that experience was how much courage Elijah has and had. Also, as a colleague, he makes some of the strongest coffee I've ever had, which I love. He became a peer and eventually a friend, so it's very good to be here with Elijah and to see you again. It's been a while. Thank you. Well, I chose this reflection, which has some of the concerns have already been voiced because we're probably all feeling the sting of what happened a couple of weeks ago. I came across this prayer by Nadia Bolz-Weber. Some of you may know her. She's a Lutheran pastor, writer, recovering alcoholic, foul-mouthed. That part I can relate to. And she wrote this prayer after the election. Dear God, there's so much to fear right now that I'm sort of losing track of what to worry about most. So I'm going to need some help focusing. Show me what is mine to do. Then grant me the strength to do it and the humility to rest, knowing it is enough. Help me remember that even if there is more to worry about in life right now, it does not mean that here is less love in life right now. So protect every inch of our joy, Lord. And if you could, help me stop reading shit on the internet. That might really help too. Amen. Honest prayer, if there ever was one. So like many of you, I feel both overwhelmed and underwhelmed by what happened. I also need to say up front, I'm not going to be overly political, certainly not partisan political. I have friends and family at many different places across the political spectrum, and religious for that matter. But what we are all likely fearing is just how much, I'll just say, the new guy will try to make sweeping changes regarding immigrants, women, people of color, and persons in the LGBTQIA community, just to name a few. I kind of doubt he will make all of those changes that he's been talking about. And even the ones he does make, I don't think it will be as bad as some might think. You can call me naive or in denial, maybe a little bit of both. But I still hold out for the goodness in some of those in Congress and other places who won't allow a completely lopsided autocratic administration to unfold. I mean, I don't see all Democrats immediately going away in January. I don't think they're all going to disappear. And I believe in what a former POTUS wrote about. I believe in the audacity of hope. Where do we go from here? I wish I had all the answers, but there are no simple answers. So what I've been doing in the midst of it all is try to listen. I've listened to what others are saying. I've heard the hurts and the pain and the fear. I've listened to voices of reason. One of those is a writer named Daniel Hunter, a political and community organizer, a writer, and a strategist. To talk about a way forward, he wrote an article entitled 10 Ways to Be Prepared and Grounded Now That Trump Has Won. In his introductory comments, he reminds us not to give in completely to the, quote, fear, isolation, exhaustion, and constant disorientation. I'm not going to go through all 10 of his points in the article, but briefly I want to share 4 of those with the hopes that they will keep us grounded and hopeful. The first thing, he says, trust yourself. And we all know we live in an era of distrust. Many institutions are no longer trusted as they were in my era and some of your era. Medicine, science, media, politicians, religion, and other institutions, a lot of people don't trust those anymore. There are a lot of conspiracy theories. Last year I taught 7th graders, and I heard a couple of 7th graders even doubt the Apollo landing on the moon, for whatever it's worth. The various ways some responded to the COVID pandemic, I think, is an example of how medical professionals are sometimes met with distrust, anxiety, suspicion, and even fear. In his article, Hunter submits that we should not give in to this culture of distrust. Rather, begin with ourselves and our own well-being and intuition. Be patient and kind with ourselves. Rest, reflect. And it goes both ways. Be trustworthy with and to others. Trust begins with ourselves. Another thing he says, find others you trust. I interpret this simply as find your community. Find groups and communities you know and who know you. Find places where fear is not a motivation for knee-jerk reactions. On building community, Hunter said this is what he's been doing. For the last several months, I've been hosting a regular group at my house to explore what is up with these times. Our crew thinks differently, but invests in trust. We emote, cry, sing, laugh, sit in stillness, and think together. End quote. And I know, this kind of community takes place here at this fellowship. Has and will continue. In difficult times, people grow stronger when they find community. And the bonds that are built have a way of sustaining over the long haul. Because, among other dynamics, in community we have this sense of belonging to each other and knowing that we are not alone. I also believe that it is in these kinds of communities that grassroots movements find their voice and purpose. I still hold out for the possibility that societal change can be brought about. But I think the most effective and longer-lasting changes take place from the bottom up, grassroots, and not so much from the top down. Rarely does it ever trickle down. I've seen this in my lifetime, and I remain committed to it and to its possibilities. The third thing, which has already been talked about, perhaps, grieve. Grief is a normal human natural response to loss and pain and difficulty. And grief happens differently for everyone. There's no manual or handbook or steps that everyone takes. We might know some who are grieving because they are fearful of being deported or having their road to citizenship come to a complete halt. Or some of us might be grieving for what has already happened in our illustrious state of Texas. Changes in adoption policies, medical procedures being denied for trans persons, like what our own Attorney General is even trying to enforce with lawsuits. There are separations, education vouchers, and there's a whole laundry list of ways that the right-wing agenda is trying to take hold of our state, and in many ways already has, sadly. So in these times, grief is expected. But Hunter makes an interesting suggestion by saying, quote, grief is a pathway to acceptance. Grief is a pathway to acceptance. One way I interpret this is to say that while it hurts now, don't give in completely to the grief. Know when to wallow in it, which is at times appropriate. But over the long term, don't get bogged down to the point that we become powerless or passive or silent or, God forbid, violent. If we find ourselves in these places, I think we have given in to defeat, and they have truly won, whoever they might be. The last thing of this article that I would share is envision a positive future. This is where I find myself, I think, more than the others, grasping for hope. I've read a lot of commentaries. I've seen some of my friends and family members vent. Okay, they've ranted and raved. I too was truly saddened by the election results. But I'm also a chronically half glass full kind of guy. I'm already hopeful for how progressives will have to regroup, reorganize, act, march, write, be in dialogue and conversation, and find a positive future for all of us. I truly believe this. I think it's what Brené Brown is talking about when she says, quote, despair is a claustrophobic feeling. It's the emotion that says nothing will ever change. It's different than anger or sadness or grief. Despair is twinged with hopelessness. But hope is a powerful antidote to despair. What's interesting is that, however, hope is not an emotion. Hope is a cognitive behavioral process. End quote. I'll say that last part again. Hope is a cognitive behavioral process. I've found this to be true the older I get. I think because, among other things, I've had my share of difficulties. And somewhere along the way, I've learned to realize that however bad things might be at that time, there's also this cognitive behavioral aspect that also comes in to tell me, you know what, you're going to be okay. Put another way, I've been through some difficult stuff before, and I know it eventually and hopefully will get better. Even if it doesn't get better, I think I'm going to be okay. My favorite movie of all time is The Shawshank Redemption of going on 30 years ago now. And I remember reading those lists about greatest movies of all time, and I remember Citizen Kane used to be put at the top of the list, number one on some lists. Well, finally, a couple of years ago, I saw it, and I thought, really? Not that great, but I digress. To me, the theme of the movie, The Shawshank Redemption, was this idea of hope, or maybe as Obama said, the audacity of hope. Hope in a prison? If you remember, spoiler alert, if you remember Red, one of the inmates at first, he was opposed to anything that was related to hope. And when Andy Dufresne played this beautiful operatic aria across the loudspeakers, he said he did it was because of hope. And then Red responded, hope is a dangerous thing. And also we all know the words from the Inferno when Dante said that the gate to hell is inscripted with the words, abandon all hope, all ye who enter here. I think that's kind of where Red found himself. He was unable to find any kind of hope in the midst of his hell of being in prison and being hopeless. But eventually, his thinking changed. He eventually gets out and he goes to this field in Maine and finds a note and a box with some money. And in the note, Andy wrote, remember, Red, hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. I didn't give credit. That's where I stole the title of my reflection. And then at the end of the movie, there's that soliloquy where Red is on his way to the beach to meet Andy, and he says these words, I hope I can make it across the border. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it has been in my dreams. I hope to see my friend again and shake his hand. I hope. I also think hope is the essence of a poem that Maya Angelou wrote for Oprah Winfrey on her 50th birthday. It's entitled Continue. With apologies, not permission, to Maya Angelou, I'm substituting continue with hope. And so it would sound like this. Hope, to be who and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. Hope, to allow humor to lighten the burden of your tender heart. Hope, in a society dark with cruelty, to let the people hear the grandeur of God in the peals of your laughter. Hope, to let your eloquence elevate the people to the heights they had only imagined. Hope, to remind the people that each is as good as the other, and that no one is beneath nor above you. Hope, to remember your own young years and look with favor upon the lost and the least and the lonely. Hope, to put the mantle of your protection around the bodies of the young and defenseless. Hope, to take the hand of the despised and diseased and walk proudly with them in the high street. Some might see you and be encouraged to do likewise. Hope, to plant a public kiss of concern on the cheek of the sick and the aged and infirmed, and count that as a natural action to be expected. Hope, to let gratitude be the pillow upon which you kneel to say your nightly prayer, and let faith be the bridge you build to overcome evil and welcome good. Hope, to ignore no vision which comes to enlarge your range and increase your spirit. Hope, to dare to love deeply and risk everything for the good thing. Hope, to float happily in the sea of infinite substance, which set aside riches for you before you had a name. And hope, and by doing so, you and your work will be able to continue eternally. As we move forward in the midst of it all, may we all have this kind of hope. Work for change, love others, make the best of the next several years, and never, ever give up. And maybe don't read too much shit on the internet. Amen. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 95. There is more love somewhere.
Musicians today, and to Dr. Flowers for joining us. Will you join me in the unison words for extinguishing the chalice?
We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you for being here today, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you briefly. And now let us receive our benediction. Go now in peace to love and serve. Go with the hope that you are not alone. And go with the assurance that come what may, goodness has a way of winning out over evil, light over darkness, and life even in the midst of death.